a debate as old as Rocket League itself, which is almost 4, by the way. Rocket League is about to turn 4, which is like 62 or so in video game years. Pretty impressive. Today I'm asking, what is the most important part of Rocket League? And more specifically, what is the most important part of improving and playing at a high level? So a few weeks back, I tweeted a poll out asking the Rocket League community, or at least those that are on my Twitter and that follow me on Twitter, which you should, by the way. I asked them, what is more important, rotations/game sense or mechanics? And I was somewhat surprised to see that of the 7,500 votes, which is a pretty good amount for something like this, 75% said rotations and game sense over mechanics. Now, this sparked some good Twitter debates, some of which were, rather nonsensical, and others which were probably somewhat productive, but there were quite a few people in the comments, well-respected Rocket League figures such as Johnny Boy and Gregan and Doomsy, Espeon, and others, who all said that mechanics is actually primary. I also tweeted a few days back with a poll trying to figure out the general ranks of my Twitter followers, that way I could basically discredit their former answer to my question because I didn't agree with it. I also tweeted out asking all the coaches and pros out there to respond with what they think is the most important part of Rocket League. Also an attempt at discrediting this idea that game sense and rotations are more important than mechanics. So what is it? What should you focus on as a player primarily? Because obviously you can't just completely neglect one over the other, but for players of every rank, especially lower level players since they make up most of the community, but even high level players, what should you spend your time doing? What should you focus on in your, long ass journey to becoming a Rocket League god, and what will get you there the fastest? First, let's clarify some things. This idea of mechanics in Rocket League is often thought of as very specific Rocket League moves. So for example, things like air dribbles or double touches, flicks, etc. And it's true, these are mechanics, but it's way, way, way more than just that. Everything in Rocket League is actually a mechanic at its base level. Every movement of your hands on the controller or keyboard and mouse is, in one sense, a mechanic. That is you doing a mechanic. From the very specifics of how you perform the fast aerial, something that I've noticed many players in lower ranks and mid ranks actually do incorrectly, to the way that you utilize drift in your turns and your recoveries. It's the speed and the smoothness you have when you take a shot and then sort of land on the wall and hold drift and jump right away. For whatever reason, we all think we understand fully what mechanics are, but until we play and grind for another 6 months and then we look back and realize that we didn't actually get those mechanics at all, or we actually kind of sucked at those mechanics and we've sort of honed them and perfected them. You should definitely try this out sometime. Go look at a replay from about 5 or 6 months ago and just watch how bad and slow and choppy and just not smooth your mechanics are compared to now. Now, it's not just that you can air dribble decent now and you couldn't then. It's that you couldn't set up a shot on the wall to air dribble. Like, you couldn't get your car to the ball from the wall efficiently. You didn't understand touches fully, and maybe you still don't. Mechanics is literally everything in this game. This tweet is a good example of kind of what I'm talking about, and I'm sorry to use it, but this guy basically says that Gainer has perfect mechanics, but yet he's still in Diamond, which I don't think he's in Diamond, but I feel like he's in Champ at least. But Gainer doesn't have perfect mechanics, and I know 100% that he would be the first person to agree with this. And Doomsy gets it perfect here. He says, can Gainer hit top corner power shots every time from every angle? Can he set up a perfect infield pass the way RLCS players do? Are his recovery mechanics at the highest level? Nobody has perfect mechanics. You think of a player like K-Dop, who's basically the best player in the world in my opinion, at least for threes. He has many of these essential mechanics basically perfected, but he can't flip reset like Gainer, and that would probably be a good solo mechanic for him to work on, honestly, because then he'd be able to pull off, more solo plays. But I'd still probably take his mechanics over Gainer's. That's why he's competing at the level that he is. No offense to Gainer at all, but for Gainer, it's not just rotations and game sense that he needs, it's also the full sort of gamut of mechanics that are in this game. It's everything. It's the speed and smoothness with which you perform them too. It's not just knowing what they are. It's not just that you can wave dash every once in a while. It's learning how to wave dash in those weird little moments. That's the stuff that sets you apart in terms of mechanics. Now, we should also clarify what we mean by game sense and rotations as well. This is more than just knowing when and how to rotate. It's reading your opponent. It's the reason you play ones against someone who's better than you and they just flick it over your head every time. That's not just mechanics. That is game sense. It's the way that they hit like a long shot on target when you go for boost. It's because they know you're going to do that and they have better game sense than you. Game sense is also everything. Like, it's such a huge part of the game. It's knowing where the small boost pads are, it's seeing the potential pass upfield and getting up for it and being ready for it. And the crazy thing about this debate is that these things can't really be separated. Game sense is literally nothing without mechanics. We can all agree on that. If you can't go up for the pass faster and more efficiently than your opponent and knock it at the goal properly, turn your car the best way, then your game sense is useless. In the same way, it doesn't matter if you can hit double flip resets. If you have no understanding of boost management and where your teammates are and what your team is trying to accomplish in that moment, then you're really no better off. So I would say personally, and again, this is a discussion, it's ongoing, we'll never have a perfect answer, and everybody's different. No need to be like a fundamentalist here. But personally, I have seen the most improvement in my game when I focus primarily on mechanics, not solely, but primarily, with small doses of taking time and really thinking about my rotations and my game sense. Although you can't really just get better game sense. That just comes from experience. Like, you can't practice game sense. So my case is a good example. I was slowly improving, and then I did a coaching session with Musty, and we talked about positioning and decision making and mechanics, and I got GC like 3 weeks later. So 100% focus on mechanics isn't the answer either. It's so good to just watch some of your replays every now and then and see where you are and why you are where you are. But anyways, if I give it a number, I would say it's like 80% focus on mechanics, from the big things like double touches and backboard shots to the little recovery mechanics that you see at the highest level. Working on those things, working on just getting touches and free play will get you farther than sitting around worrying all the time about your positioning and your rotations. Those things come primarily through experience. You can't get game sense unless you just keep playing. Like, you can watch Squishy and watch yourself play and see the differences, but you can't really have it until you just keep doing it. The number one factor for your improvement in Rocket League is time spent actually practicing. And you can't really practice rotations. And even when you are practicing rotations, you are simultaneously practicing mechanics too. So there's never a scenario where rotations and game sense actually outweigh your practice of mechanics, shooting, air dribbling, all those things.
I think that in some ways I'm kind of framing this discussion a little bit differently than the people who are debating this or even responding on my Twitter. So if you actually say what is more important in someone's actual gameplay, that is game sense, rotation versus, actual mechanics, like raw mechanics, I don't think there's really debate that it's either one or the other. I would say it's like 50-50 or something like that. But in terms of what you actually focus on in practice, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I don't think you should spend half of your time thinking about and working on rotations and game sense, because you can't really work on those things. I mean, you can to some extent, but not the way that you can mechanics and just gameplay. Game sense comes with time, and rotations comes with time too. But you can work on rotations a little bit. So I'm sort of framing it in terms of what you focus on as a player while you're trying to improve, whereas I think they're sort of focusing on people like K-Dop, for example. Like, does he have better mechanics or does he have better game sense and rotations? I mean, it's kind of both. It's kind of like 50-50, and that's what makes him such a great player. But then we look at somebody like Squishy. I mean, in some ways you would say maybe his like raw mechanics are sort of outweighing his game sense and rotations. Maybe somebody like K-Dop has better rotations and game sense. I don't know. There definitely are players who have better mechanics and their, game sense is a little bit lower than other players. And you could say that the person with the really high level game sense and the basic mechanics, that person is better. And that's kind of how Snasky sort of formed it in his tweet. He was basically saying the more interesting question is, would you rather have someone with basic mechanics and really high level game sense, or really high level mechanics and basic game sense? That's kind of an interesting way to pose it too. But hey, don't take my word for it. One of the best ways to speed up the process of improvement is to go and hire a Rocket League coach. So I started this platform for Rocket League and for Rocket League coaching back in October. And since then, tons of players have seen incredible improvement in their game from hiring a coach. I think there's over 450 reviews on the site, so you can go check those out if you want. I've got a link in the description, so go browse a few of the coaches' profiles, and who knows, maybe you'll find the coach that's perfect for you. Honestly, all the coaches are amazing, but yeah. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with my Twitter followers who say that game sense and rotations are 75% of what make up a great player and 25% mechanics? Let us know in the comments below. Regardless, keep at it, get your rewards before the season ends, because it's going to be goal explosions, which is pretty amazing. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Peace out.